Okay, beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. This is the title of the presentation. Katya sort of forced me to have a title, so I'm going to try to follow this structure.
I forced his hand.
Yeah, I forced my hand. Quick question, just for a little bit of reference in the room. Who's actually like the founder, owner of a company? You? Okay, cool. We'll talk about ChatGPT a bit. Who's actually interacting through like the API layer of GPT? Not as much. Okay. Anyone know what like vector embeddings are? Embeddings? Have anyone interacted with embeddings? Okay, cool. All right, that gives me a good base mark here. The second question I had for Katya was like, why not here? Like, why me? I didn't really fully understand, but someone referred, so I appreciate that very much. I run a company called Speak AI. Started this in 2019. Concepted it when I was running a marketing agency, facing a lot of challenges dealing with like search engine data. I was just setting up a lot of Google ads. People were like clicking on my Google ads, making a phone call, and I didn't know what happened in the call. And I wanted to like brag to our clients that we contributed to sales. So I sort of saw this idea for this system where I could hook in, take audio, video, text data, automatically analyze it, understand the outcome. And so that was sort of the vision that I had. Probably 2017, 2018 when I first started working on that before it really formalized into a company. I was in London, Ontario, 2 hours away from here, and I was trying to sort of pitch this to people. I was just getting a lot of glossy looks in people's eyes. And probably my own failure to articulate it, but it was also like really early in the space, and I didn't even really know what I was talking about. So came to some events in Toronto, AWS events, something like that, and I started to meet some people, instantly connected and clicked. And so I decided to move to Toronto, join a program called the DMZ here in Toronto. It was 2020. 3 months later, COVID starts. So it sort of put us into a weird spot. But we put our sort of heads down and built out the company that became Speak AI. And what was interesting is, and I'll share this a little bit, we were operating in this sort of like past paradigm. So previously, if you had taken like unstructured language data, you wanted to hit this value proposition. Turn it into insights, do it fast and with no code. There was a bunch of techniques you would do. You would upload it, you would run sentiment analysis on it, you would do it's called name identity recognition. You take it, you put it as brands, locations, people. You'd sort of say, okay, this brand, you pair it with sentiment, this is how you decide if there's sort of an insight or a value here or what this actually means. So we started working with like a lot of research firms to figure that out. And then, a few years later, we just did not foresee this huge improvement in, or this innovation in transformers that has now produced GPT. And so we built for this past paradigm, but because we had built this foundation, we benefited from that paradigm. So I think this is probably a little bit of the reason why, I probably was referenced. This is our company in terms of app user signups. First month we got 11 signups, it's very exciting. I have another month to update here. I was actually not on June, but last month was 15,000 people. So this is us riding the tailwinds of the AI movement, setting a foundation, operating both in the past paradigm of how you hit this value proposition, and then very quickly integrating these like large language models into our system to provide like bigger value propositions to our company. So I call these this is like the dark ages of the company, me trying to pitch people, and then one's like, oh, what the hell you talk about? And then you can see in this growth curve, and there's no, we basically sort of know what happened here. This is OpenAI, this is GPT. One of the other things that you talked a little about was like creating content. I use GPT, create a bunch of content on our site, optimize landing pages. People who say they're only using it to partially create content, I think they're lying. I think they're using it fully. We stacked, we went from about 2,000 people on the site a month to about 60,000 people on the site each month, and then that just transferred into signups in the application. So, super fun time. A lot of also challenges during that time. I'm not going to spend too much on this, but just was a marketing agency before this, and I can't be up here and stand. I have an incredible CTO. He built out most of this stuff. I would not be here without him. So very proud of him. He's not here today. He was building product at home. And then where we at? So in total, that brings us to about 80,000 app signups, almost about to cross the 2,000 paid customers. We're just doing like a year to date. Last year, I think this year we added, it was like 1,500 customers this year. Last year at this time it was like 68 customers. So we're really riding this wave right now. We're learning a lot of things, and we're also facing a lot of challenges that go along with it. So sort of excited to lean into it and talk about it a bit today. I apologize, I'm a little unpolished on this because I've been sort of heads down, working on it, working with customers, and it's my first time actually articulating it to a group. So appreciate you bearing with me on this. I don't know, this is more of a pitch slide, to be honest. This is what I say to investors. It's very vague and stuff, but like this is what we're seeing right now. It's just like organizations hearing about this stuff. They're sort of exploring it for the first time ever. And we are sensing this like fear. They just like think that they're gonna get left behind. They don't know what's going on. And I don't know, this line is like the truth is they are and they should be, a little rough. But I think it is what we're already seeing. We work with a lot of research firms and teams, and the ones who are adopting this technology, we're already seeing them accelerate across like ahead of teams that are not. So there is some founded truth in this sort of message, and I think depending on if you're an AI company or whatever, you can also capitalize on this in your value proposition in marketing. Fear does work, but I think what's happening here is for the first time ever, the expectation curve or the opportunity with AI can actually deliver if you set some things up right. So again, I'll talk about a couple of those challenges that we've seen working with customers, and then how we sort of solve those to produce what we think is real value. And then quickly, you talked a little bit about the flywheel. We look at it as the same thing, like we call it the 3 pillars. We need to capture the data. So for us, that's a bunch of integrations and hooking into different systems, and that can be, we've got meeting bots that hook into Zoom and Microsoft Teams. We've got all different, CSV imports, so you can take Amazon review data, upload it in the system. So first of all, you need to be able to open up that capture mechanism. Second is analyze that sort of component of it, and again, sort of sentiment, named entity recognition. There were all these previous techniques that were really valuable, but what we found is you could visualize all this data and still people said, now what? It was just overwhelming amount of information, visual stimulation. They didn't necessarily know what was the true outcome or what they could go back to their team with or a client if they were doing some research. And then last, generally you want to be able to share those insights. So we're seeing a lot of sort of AI sort of transformation happen internally within the organizations, but we're also seeing sort of this gap in how do you actually take that knowledge and then share it out. So I think that's the final piece of that pillar, and we believe that those work really interchangeably. I'm not going to spend, again, too much time on this, but who are we working with, just so you have an understanding of what are we seeing. So we work with a lot of marketing firms and agencies, and what we're seeing is that they're actually trying to take this kind of technology, build it into their current workflows. Just as an example, research firm, they do 50 focus groups. Maybe they used to record those. They would get people to transcribe them manually, and then they would do all this manual coding and all these sections throughout the transcripts to sort of arrive at their insights. They would go and then do a PowerPoint presentation, and they would hope that the team that they were presenting to would listen to that PowerPoint presentation, make some good decisions off that. So that was sort of the previous paradigm. Research firms are trying to figure out how to break that paradigm with this technology, and in a way, sort of white label this kind of technology so they can basically build more valuable outcomes, but also streamline their research and get more profitable projects. So we're seeing a lot of that right now, but then we're also seeing, I think, enterprises for the first time ever try to build their own, I like the word flywheel, of data capture and then more real-time analysis, because a lot of times you engage with a research firm or agency, you hire them, 3-month project, they come and deliver a presentation at the end. By the time they deliver that presentation, the whole world has changed. Those insights are no longer relevant or meaningful. So they're trying to be more ingesting data in real time to then produce these sort of shared knowledge experience. And so I just wanted to show you, this is the past paradigm. You would upload a bunch of data, and then you would extract out keywords, and you may be lucky. You get a keyword that's interesting, you can drill down on that keyword and see a report. Or you put some sentiment on it and you classify all your data and you get some sentiment. And again, seems really cool in theory. We still see a lot of companies who are coming to us and saying, hey, we want to do sentiment on all our social media reviews and comments on that. But I think generally it's actually not delivering what it's a bunch of technical processes applied to a problem so that they can hopefully find an answer. And it's not necessarily always been working or functional, or it just makes a lot more work for teams to then go back and produce insights. So where is the new paradigm? And I think we're also, now all pretty used to this, is I just want to ask a question and get an answer. And so that's the new behavior shift that we're seeing in the market. Almost every single customer that we want, maybe they're operating in those 2 paradigms that I've talked about, past paradigm, sentiment analysis, named entity recognition, all that stuff. Almost all of them want to move towards this paradigm and also allow their own teams to be able to have this paradigm too. So how can you very quickly take that data, share it amongst the team, and allow you to question, interact with that information in a really meaningful way? So this is sort of the challenge that not the challenge we're seeing, but there's challenges in this process, but the direction that the entire market is heading. And so we're spending a lot of time on this. So I think a couple quick points that I want to touch on that I think are maybe interesting to consider. So one of the use cases for AI today, the more previous one was speech recognition. Take a call, transcribe that call, and then analyze that data. Some people are summarizing it, trying to pull insights out. However, there's this cost infrastructure that then gets built into this. So if you want to record a call, maybe you're hooking into Amazon, Google, you're paying 2 cents per minute. There's a cost mechanism built into that. So then you need to get something valuable enough out to actually make that cost worthwhile. And hopefully you're storing that data in a way that is valuable enough for you to then interact with and get insights on a more retroactive basis. However, now there's this new layer that people want to build in. They want this chat functionality. They want the LLMs. They want that. And so as an example, we had a past version of this. This is why I asked about the GPT API versus embeddings. A research firm would come in, they'd take 50 focus groups. 50 focus groups would be an hour each. They would want to ask a question to those 50 focus groups. So what do you have to do? You have to take, right now with GPT limitations, at the max you're getting 8,000 characters or tokens, whatever. So you're taking a couple minutes at a time of each call, you're chunking and setting it up to that large language model. By the time you get to those 50 focus groups, you've got 400 chunks of data that then they're trying to then grab. So we would have people come in and do that focus group to ask one question, and one question would cost them $57. And most of the time, those questions would not even produce the answers that they were looking for. And so I think this is one of the really technical challenges that people have this grand ambition with AI to achieve, but the technical limitations of how much characters it can take, context length of all these models is really going to create a lot of problems from, hey, here's where we are now to here's the ideal world that we're trying to get to. And so one of the ways that you can get through, and that's what I wanted to sort of talk about quickly. Let's see if I can pull up this slide here, is this system called vector embeddings. And I think this is if you're into this space, it's a really worthwhile concept to understand, because instead of, think if that research company, they asked that one question, it cost them $57. If they want to ask another question, they literally need to upload all of that data again, get an answer, and it's going to cost them $57 again. 2 questions, 2 answers, $114. The vector embeddings, what you can do, you can take all that data, even cheaper. You can look it up on OpenAI website. There's also other versions of this called ADA model, or Cohere has their own version. Cohere, great LLM, Toronto company. You upload it one time, and what happens is these words become basically numerically represented. And so all you have to do is, instead of those 50 focus groups uploading it every single time to get a question, you literally just have to upload it once. And so the next time that you go and ask a question, instead of having to re-upload all that data, you can literally, what it does is you actually are pulling out only the numerically related data to that question. And so all of a sudden, you're only taking maybe a small percentage of, like a slice of all of those 50 focus groups to produce a valuable response. So we've been doing some tests on this. Same thing that would be about $57 there, we're now down to pennies, 99% reduction cost. And what's really, really exciting about that is then that allows you to ask more questions for pennies each, so it doesn't cost you anything. And there's also what vector embeddings allows you to do is open up the sort of chat experience where you can iterate on answers, because what embeddings also allows you to do is store the data so that it has like long-term memory. So when you're interacting with ChatGPT, they have done this sort of modeling, and that's why it's holding that context so you can continue to ask these questions. So I do have a list of companies that are worthwhile following. I'll actually pull this slide up just so I can reference for specifically, I think, this topic. These are the 2 biggest ones that have emerged. Pinecone, this is basically how you build vector databases. This company came out of nowhere, sort of built this infrastructure, and has become, I think, $1 billion value company because they're allowing people to store these vector databases. And then also LangChain, which honestly, I don't really know what LangChain is. but we use it every day, and it's really what's allowing you to then interact with Pinecone with the vector embeddings and also chain sort of commands together to make this whole interaction layer. So what I'm sort of trying to move or sort of encourage people to do is everyone wants the benefits of this, but you're going to hit a data threshold point where it no longer makes sense to go through this API model where you're just chunking or sending all this media. It's going to be too cost prohibitive, and you're not going to get sort of the benefits that you want out of it. So you will then be forced to make this movement, this transformation towards vector embeddings. And I think this is a concept barely anyone knew about 6 months ago, but is now becoming a very important sort of process to make this actually happen. And what's interesting, I'll just show in a live sort of scenario. Sorry, I got too many tabs open here. And this is the actual dashboard that people can interact with. Sorry, I got too many things going on. And what also is really nice about vector embeddings, one of the two things that have been really challenging is if you, it doesn't matter what, you ask a question, you get an answer, and you're like, how the hell did it arrive at this answer? And so what's really fascinating about embeddings is you can actually see the reference source, basically the reference data of how it arrived at that answer. And you can even sort of fine tune basically how many pieces of reference information that you want to select every time you have a question to arrive at that answer. So in this case, we did a bunch of like office hours, conference calls, and I was like, hey, what challenges is the team having in software sales? So literally printed out all the software sales, all the challenges that we're having in a nice answer, but it also provided me the reference information. And because you're dealing with audio and video and you have timestamps on that, I can literally click on this and I can play that moment back. So if a research firm or anyone, you have to make this big insight that you get from all your data, you have to go back and present it to your team, or you have to go back and present it to your client. They're going to ask you, how did you arrive at this answer? If you don't have references, if you don't have sources and evidence, that sort of recommendation is going to fall apart. They're going to tell you to go back to the drawing board and do more of this manual process. But with this, it sort of allows you to overcome that challenge because you can say, hey, here's this exact reference information and how it arrived at this answer. So that's where we've been spending a lot of time because not only was it costing our customers a lot, which actually was good for our top line revenue, but it was not an ideal customer experience to get $57 for an answer that was semi-sufficient. So these are the iterations that you're going to have to use or work with if you want to embed AI in your project and deal with large sources of language information. Any questions there? I know I just ranted. Any thoughts on vector embeddings things?
So to be clear, you cannot do that through ChatGPT directly. You have to work with companies that provide that.
OpenAI provides an embedding model. It's called Ada. Ada Lovelace, one of the original creators of the computer, and it's much cheaper, basically, to do it. And so when you interact with the embedding, say you have 50 focus groups, that could be, just for clarity, 10 million characters. And now all of a sudden, it's only going to systematically pull out the valuable components of that, and maybe it goes down to 100,000 characters. So you just have a massive decrease, and you filtered out all the sort of unvaluable information. So you can still work with OpenAI. It's just a different model that you're pointing at, and sort of a different process. And unfortunately, they haven't really built the infrastructure to host those embeddings. So that's why that Pinecone company has become so valuable and popular. Any other questions on that? I know I was like, as I was talking, I was like, sorry. And then what I'm going to talk about, I think, is a more macro picture that we're seeing here. This is amazing. I don't like to give them that credit that much, but from Anderson Horowitz, basically a post on, again, too many buzzwords going on right now, generative AI, now synthesis AI, but it's a fantastic painting picture of this, because when we looked at the first companies, I think anyways in my mind, that went truly sort of parabolic with growth from these kind of releases. I think of Jasper, I think of Writer, I think of all these content creation companies. They write me a blog post, write me an email, all of this stuff. The paradigm that we're actually moving into now, again, I don't think we need another name for it, but it's sort of labeled, Anderson Horowitz labels it synthesis AI or synth AI. And so really, instead of prompt to information, we're actually reversing. We're going information to insights. And so at a larger scale, we're going to see more and more companies plugging into their entire knowledge bases, every single thing that happens in your company, and allowing you to sort of query that information. There's a company here in Toronto called Cohere, say a competitor to OpenAI, building large language models. Adrian started that company. He was on the original Google paper that unlocked transformers for the world and made this happen. So there's a lot of credibility there. They just released a platform called Coral, which is for enterprise knowledge management. Hooks into every system you think imaginable and allows you to query across that entire system in a secure, I don't know if it's on-premise, but secure environment. So that's the future that we're headed. I think privacy is definitely an issue that people have. Different companies, different things. Like we're working with UK research firms who we thought would be really uptight against this, but they just want the advancements from the AI, and so they're full steam ahead. But when I talk to a government, Canadian entity, it's like on premises, no data anywhere, there's no other option. So you'll see that depending on where you are in your own journey. Those different kind of markets and different types of industries look at privacy in a different way, but there's definitely a sliver or a big part of this market that just wants the gains that come from it. They'll worry about the privacy implications later, for better or for worse. I'm not saying that's a positive or negative thing. And I don't know, I'm not going to go too deep into these. These are like some slides, but it is interesting. I do link the article here, A16Z, B2B, Generative AI, Synth AI. They do a really interesting job of laying out where the potential of sort of Synth AI lies and sort of the use cases. And so again, I think this is the trend and where we're headed over the next few years. I do believe in what you're doing, like the personalized sort of piece, especially when you hook it into different systems and you're personalizing like at scale, but very hyper-focused. But this market will grow significantly over the next few years. I think it's an exciting time of what's actually possible there. And just to, goddamn, my face again. I just wrote an experience or a YouTube video on OpenAI. I think one more consumer-faced version of this. Have you guys played Code Interpreter? Has anyone done Code Interpreter? Oh, cool. That's a worthwhile thing to check out. Basically, you can, instead of interacting through text with it, I should have done a live demo or something, but I thought you upload a CSV, you upload any data source, and you can just start questioning that data source. So that's the layer, that's where we're heading again with this in a very consumer-focused package. It can be large scale, transcripts of call summaries, or it can be data sets that talk about governments, about how many birds die every year. And it can be, you literally just ask questions and get the response, and it's the language understanding that it has of a CSV, just as one example, is mind-blowing. It will literally print out its own understanding for you. You can iterate on that understanding and then interact with that data in any way. And it will also give you the code snippets of how it was doing it to give you your own. So I'm learning, I'm a decent front-end developer, actually a shitty front-end developer, but seeing that code structure and how it's tackling that problem is really enlightening. And those were tools or techniques that when I started Speak AI in 2019, you needed to be a data scientist or developer at some of the top companies in the world to be able to have this interaction layer. And now it's just in our hand with a couple questions. So definitely check out Code Interpreter. I think you need to be a paying ChatGPT user, and then it's a plugin that's available, and it will be rolled out in wide release soon. And then I think, maybe not directly following this line, but like this idea of like Salesforce, Einstein, obviously Microsoft Copilot, these systems where they're looking at the entire infrastructure of every data asset that you have and then being able to question and interact with it. I think Salesforce is a really interesting one because they know the outcomes of calls. They know if it turned into a deal or not. And so all of a sudden when you do this interaction layer, it opens up a lot of value creation there. And just I think a worthwhile, silly Einstein picture, but I think overall pretty good. And then just a couple, I don't know how much I'm going to spend on this. I'm almost done, so don't worry about that. A couple companies, I think. One of the challenges here, also too, I'll tell you about it, is that OpenAI sort of temporarily sunsetted their 32,000 character model. And so we were able to use that model for a lot of one-shot, pretty long, but one-shot question answers to get a good response. They decided, because of volume, because of demand, and some problems and some re-architecture, that they needed to basically temporarily sunset that model. And so all of a sudden you go from either 32,000 characters in GPT-4, or you get stuck at 16,000 characters on GPT 3.5, which is wonky, or 8,000 characters on GPT-4. And so a bunch of companies I know, we were plugged into this, we had this, all of a sudden the quality of our responses dropped dramatically because we couldn't handle the context that was being asked. And that's what also forced our hand to move the productization of those vector embeddings even quicker. So I think that's the other thing is, while there's a lot of excitement and hype around these companies right now, we don't know exactly where they're going to end up. We don't know the reliability of their systems, their own sort of demands from their shareholders or stakeholders in the company, and things can change really quickly. We were plugging that model into production, they just decided to rip it out, put a little blog post out, and all of a sudden, we've got 80,000 people who are not getting responses in our system. And so you think that there are huge commercial and technical challenges here. And so again, what I'm seeing here is use this embeddings because it gives you more flexibility to handle problems, and also start to look at not just OpenAI, but other solutions. So Anthropic, amazing company, 100,000 character token limit right now. You can go to Claude.ai. Unfortunately, you have to put a VPN on it, pretend you're in the US, and you can interact with this model. It's absolutely incredible. And then we're also obviously seeing things like Llama from Meta, where I do think we will see a huge rise of open source models that companies are installing themselves and using to protect that sort of privacy layer, as well as even a company like Inflection. They just raised $3.14 billion. $3.14 million, billion dollars. I don't know why I'm getting that wrong, but because they called their, what am I trying to say? They called their model Pi, and they were basically trying to match the money raised with the name of their model. And so that's also the kind of money we're interacting with. That's the guy who started DeepMind at Google. And those are kind of the systems and companies that we're going to see because they have the technical experience, they have the clout in the market. So even though we see this layer of companies now, we're going to see more and more pop up. There was a company called Mistral AI, started a company 3 weeks later, raised 103 million euros 3 weeks into their company formation. So we're going to see a lot more companies on this, and we're going to see some roller coasters go up and down. So if you do want to interact with this technology, you got to have some platform agnosticism and some backup opportunities. Otherwise, your whole system can fail, and you're going to see a lot of degraded performance. So I think that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to gloss over that. I'm happy to answer any questions or anything. My name's Tyler. Tyler at speak.co. You can't see this calendar link or click on it, but it's there. And add me on LinkedIn and stuff. Obviously, I'm super fired up about the space, dealing with a lot of people trying to solve these problems right now. I think it's both exciting. I think there's a lot of the term that I'm seeing right now is AI tourists. So we get a lot of people, we're just testing every platform. And they're all just, I'll sign up for a monthly subscription. Everyone gets all excited. Hey, we got a new customer. 14 days later, like, I cancel the subscription. So I think we're seeing a lot of hype curve right now. And we're also seeing even what we've seen, which is, again, model gets degraded or something like that. All of a sudden, performance and quality answers go, and people think, oh, AI's done. There's no hope here. So if you are here, you probably got some interest in this, sort of pierce through the illusion and the disillusion of this, and just keep chugging away, because it is a super exciting time, and in the right way, it can deliver on the proposition, but maybe some things to be more managed and interact with. So yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Tyler? Or should we take it to the patio?
The sign up graph that you showed was really impressive. I missed, what did you say led to from 68 to now 1,500 a month? Was that just
15,000? And it's not just no. So it was OpenAI. People basically just started searching for AI solutions, and I sort of saw that trend. One was prompt engineering, people deciding how to engineer prompts. And basically I saw this opportunity where people, I stacked landing pages. So people would say ChatGPT for Zoom meetings, ChatGPT for PDFs, built a landing page for every single one of those. So that became this highly optimized sort of sales engine for us. So yeah, personalized landing pages, partly personalized by human, mostly personalized by GPT. And so we put out probably 600 pages at scale there, and then we rode the wave.
And how did you do that? Is that
through a combination of Zapier, WordPress, and GPT? So it was sort of an auto trigger configuration that would automatically publish pages. It was a Google Sheet basically, and I customized that sheet to pump out those pages, and I felt great about it in the end.
Interesting.
The question about like dependency risk, so being dependent on OpenAI. So how do you think of that, and how do you mitigate the risk?
Yeah, one would be just like toggling different models if you're seeing failed, like OpenAI, even OpenAI's models. Like if 4 is not working, go down to 3.5, like switching between that, and then we, in this circumstance, like are still doing some hack manual stuff to pull, like sort of cheat into Anthropic's system to pull the data automatically when they haven't given us API access yet. So I think it's a mix of having different APIs that you're toggling in, and also we're now exploring, for example, our own installation of Llama, so that we can interact with that. But obviously, there's consequences to hosting that, and cost of that too. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Who are the sorry, thank you, fantastic presentation. Who are the people that you find are at that kind of intersection of being close to the problem that they need to solve for, like for example using Speak AI and having the ability to search for the things and to understand, you know, how low is the understanding of AI needed for your users, for example, or for your customers or targets, or is it purely the outcome that they're searching for?
I think just the natural language interface allows it to be really accessible for people. Like that previous paradigm I showed you, where it was like a keyword and then paired with sentiment, that was much more complex in a way because you had to pair all these different. Now it's just like ask question, get answer. As long as that answer is reliable or seems reliable, then the knowledge gap seems to close really quickly. We're dealing with companies and people who this is their first time ever trying to figure this out, and so there's a learning curve for them to go through, and we're trying to help with that learning curve. Or we're seeing very mature companies. In that case, what they're more trying to do is connect workflows. Like right now, they're taking a call from Ring Central, they're exporting the transcript, they're taking snippets of that transcript, uploading it into ChatGPT, querying that data, getting the answer that they want, and then copy and pasting that answer and putting it into a document for their team. So our system will just do that whole thing for you. So that's where we're seeing more advanced teams sort of work with.
Understood. Thanks.
Anything else? Otherwise, good. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Well, I'll talk to you.